So hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Vanquish Soul, and not just Vanquish Soul in general, but just how the game is only going to get more and more complicated, and the game is going to be harder and harder for newer players to kind of pick up and understand. Well, in my opinion, at least. So if we just look at Vanquish Soul, this deck, honestly, to play, it's probably a lot more beginner friendly than you think, and there's not really too much you can do to mess up with Vanquish Soul. I mean, there are things, right? So like chain link order matters when we are resolving effects like Borger and Rosin. So if we go like specifically, um, I believe it was chain link 1 Borger, chain link 2 Rosin effect to pop. If we were doing that, you can technically order the chain link wrong, and like without even your opponent's interference, it'd be like chain link 1 Rosin, chain link 2 Borger, and then Rosin's not in the same kind of column, so it's not going to destroy any cards. Like there are little things like that, but aside from that, activating these effects, as long as you have the general idea, so in this case it's just mostly getting Xiaolong to reveal 2 monsters and then special summoning Rosin as much as possible, or yeah, revealing 2 fires with Xiaolong, special summoning Rosin a bunch. You can't really go too wrong with this, but at the same time, let's break down just Rosin by itself, right? So if this card is either normal or special summoned, you can add 1 non-warrior Vanquish Soul monster from your deck to your hand. Quick effect, you can activate one of these effects by revealing monsters in your hand with the listed attributes. If you reveal only fire, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects this turn. Fire and Dark, destroy all other monsters in this card's column. And as a result of Powercreep, more and more cards are going to have like more effects, they're going to get stronger, they're going to get better, just in general. But yeah, last line. You can only use each effect of Vanquish Soul Rosin once per turn, and cannot activate more than 1 in the same chain. So if you activate this effect, you can't then activate this effect down here. Well, not in the same chain at least. But yeah. This is just Rosin, by the way. And we have how many other cards? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 monsters, and then technically you also have Rock of the Vanquisher, which has kind of also 3 effects. So I guess I do like the fact that you kind of have like Thunder Dragon effects here, in the sense that you have 2 effects on your cards, and you can only pick 1, but now you have 1 guaranteed effect that you can use each turn, more or less, and then a effect that you can pick between the 2 effects, if that makes sense. Well, let me know if you understand Thunder Dragon players. But yeah. So Vanquish Soul is not even what you might consider. Like for most people, this wouldn't really have been a super game-changing landslide landmark deck. Like for example, I know Tearlaments, Malice, Ryzeal. It's definitely not that impactful. Like I guess Snake Eye as well. Those decks much more impactful, and you might consider those much more meta than Vanquish Soul ever was. Well, at the moment, apparently Canine Vanquish Soul is a thing, but that hasn't released in Master Duel yet, so not even going to remotely entertain that idea right now, but alright. Vanquish Soul, kind of just a mid-deck all around. But this is what a mid-deck looks like, right? When we go to Malice, for example, or Ryzeal, they have better effects for the most part, and they have an absurd amount of card text on their effects. Like, for example, March Hare, this actually does 3 different things. Your opponent cannot target Malice Link monsters that point to this card with card effects. So, in theory, it would, well, I don't think I've seen this come up, but if you have a March Hare on field, you can protect this from infinite this red ransom. Well, during the resolution, you could protect it from like an imperm with the effect of March Hare, just by having it pointing to March Hare. And then it also has the effect to add back any Malice monster, but specifically monster, not like trap, not spell. specifically a monster if March Hare is banished, including itself. Whereas there are a lot of cards that actually cannot add themselves, like for example with Vanquish Soul Razin, being able to only add non-warrior Vanquish Soul monsters. So basically just not itself. And then we have also the fact to special summon itself, or special summon itself as a quick effect, like banishing one other Malice card from your hand or graveyard. If you do special summon this card, and also of course it can banish itself. So March Hare can banish March Hare. Because, yes, I guess. But you know, Xiaolong, I guess, cannot reveal. Wait, or yeah, it can reveal Xiaolong, right? But it cannot add itself. There's a lot of these restrictions on a lot of cards where, well, it depends on the card. Sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. Feels kind of iffy, like Fenrir can add Fenrir, but Xiaolong cannot add Xiaolong. Okay. I guess it was like kind of to prevent loops, but also at the same time, bro, my cards have hard once per turn, so why do I need to, like, why do I need this? Why can't I just search Xiaolong with Xiaolong? Like, I'm never going to do it, but why can't I? So just going to throw that out there real quick. But yeah, Powercreep is going to be giga insane. So eventually, I mean, at our current point in time, I think the turning point was probably close around Tearlaments. Well, at least that's when I started seeing it mostly, where we were getting monsters with essentially 3 effects. So if we go to, I guess Unlimited's fine. So we go Tearlaments, and then we'll go to Sheeran specifically. We have essentially 3 effects tied to Sheeran, and I mean, they're not literally 3 effects, it's only technically 2, but the effect to mill is technically an effect that could be like a whole card's effect, pretty much, right? So think in terms of, I guess, like, I guess Armageddon Knight, where if the card is summoned, it just sends a card, right? And that is the whole effect of this card. But now, Sheeran's equivalent to that is that it's special summoning itself and then sending cards. So it would be kind of just strictly an upgrade to that, and there are cards where their only effect is more or less to just special summon themselves. Think like, I guess, Jet Synchron, mostly. I mean, that's the only effect people use. Technically, that card actually has a second effect, but don't worry about it. Alright, and then we have the effect to perform the Tearlaments fusion summons. So overall, we can break this down as special summon self, send card, and then we also have effective fusion summon. Before this point, the expectation for a card would be maybe we have like special summon itself and then just one other effect. This essentially is 3 effects, kind of really pushing what cards can do to an extent. And then we have Kit Kelos, which also has just legitimately 3 effects now, where if we don't even look at the archetype as a whole, just having this raw amount of card effects is just kind of a big deal, right? Where we have the effect here to either add a card or Foolish Burial a card. Then we have the Reborn effect, and then the Mill effect, for a total of 3 effects. But now if we go to essentially Vanquish Soul, we have 3 effects with an asterisk on like Razin, and basically every single one of these cards has 3 effects with an asterisk, because they're still not necessarily as good as Sheeran, because Sheeran can technically use quote-unquote like all 3 effects on this card in one turn, whereas we can still, we're limited to 2 effects on our Vanquish Soul card. So yeah, Tearlaments kind of broken. But that aside, how are you supposed to, as a new player, really get into this? So if we have a newer player playing against Vanquish Soul, not even a meta deck by the way, then you have to contest all of these cards, kinda, right? And you have to kind of figure out what they do, and that's going to be difficult. So let's say I normal summon Razin, and then you're thinking like, okay, Razin, you read the card, yeah, it looks like a starter, I guess. I'll maybe imperm this. Oh, heavy burger effect. And then this tags out, and your imperm just literally just did nothing. Yeah, just pure neg 1. but it wasn't that the imperm was actually useless. It was just a misplay because the correct point to essentially imperm against Vanquish Soul is just going to be just Rock of the Vanquisher. So if we look at the 2-card combo here, it's just like idea of Rosin searches Xiaolong, and Xiaolong doesn't do anything unless you have 2 fire monsters in your hand. Typically, you'll only find yourself having 1 other fire monster in your hand. So if we just do a quick like sample hand here, like yeah, see we only have like Ash Blossom here, and technically we do have Stake Your Soul. But yeah, so an example of how you would beat this hand is, let's say Stake Your Soul reveals Rosin. You can Ash either the Stake Your Soul or the Rosin. It's both like about the same, genuinely. It doesn't really change much. Yeah. And then on normal summon Rosin, you don't imperm this. Then when Rosin inevitably gets linked off, it'll be for Rock, and then in Chain to Rock, you can just negate Rock, which can't do anything against targeted effects or anything like that. So you just imperm this, and it's completely safe. And then your opponent's hand cards should be just like Ash Blossom with a Xiaolong on field doing essentially nothing. But like in particular in this hand, technically since we have Borger, we can return the Rosin straight to the hand. So that plays around like imperm no matter what. But this is like a 4-card hand technically, without including Dust Devil. So that there's nothing you could really do in this case. But yeah, general idea, you just hold for Rock here. But without like full knowledge of the archetype, there's no way you would know to specifically hold like this specific hand trap for the specific card when like 3, 4, 5 other cards have to resolve off of this like 1-card combo, essentially, kind of before yeah, the actual kind of choke point for your card shows up. And then there's some other archetypes where it's like you don't really have a choice. So I mean, this is technically easier for newer players to kind of face sometimes. So like with Ryzeal, if you only open 1 Ryzeal, then there is a choke point, and simply the first Ryzeal that you activate and try to resolve the search of, just immediately hit that one. If your opponent has 2 Ryzeals, there was nothing you could have ever done, no matter where you hit or anything like that. Even if you have like 2 hand traps versus 2 starter / engine cards. So yeah, you just kind of unleash the sun as much as possible here and just drop whatever you have like as soon as possible. And that's about the most you're getting out of these cards, really. So that sums up how you would play against Ryzeal, but this type of playstyle is punished kind of if you're playing against Vanquish Soul, right? But also, of course, what's even more funny about Vanquish Soul is that every single one of these card effects on Vanquish Soul, they're actually all relevant effects, so you kind of have to know all of these effects. So just to go over all of the effects that are kind of relevant. So Pantera here has 2 main effects, pop back row, and then you have the fact that this cannot be destroyed by battle. And this seems like it's not going to be that important, but actually it pairs with Raka the Vanquisher very well, because you cannot attack Raka the Vanquisher whilst you control a Vanquish Soul monster. And that essentially forces you to attack the Pantera, which now you can't destroy by battle because of this effect here. And then there is the effect of Xiaolong, which changes the battle position of 1 monster on the field. This is not exclusive to just your monsters, it's any monster, and also worth mentioning, I guess, is all of these effects do not target. There's not a single targeting effect anywhere in Vanquish Soul. So that's a thing. Absolutely nothing targets here. Raka the Vanquisher doesn't even target cards in the graveyard, so cards like 80 Crow, and even Bestials can be a bit weaker, even if there is like a dark target. Because, you know, let's say I have Borger plus Rosin in the graveyard, then even if you banish the Borger, and I did want to add the Borger in that case, you know, just adding Rosin's still fine. I am getting something out of my card effect at least. So we have all of these ideas, and then also Caesar, I guess, has the effect to become unaffected or pop 1 card generically non-targeting. Rosin has the effect to destroy all other monsters in this card's column, and it also has a protection effect. So technically, if we were to get hit by, I don't know, just some sort of generic board wipe, we could chain Rosin to it, and then in new chains, special summon Xiaolong. That's just kind of a thing. But also because of the Vanquish Soul fine print over here, if we were to be torrential attributed on normal summon of Rosin, we can't protect against that or do much about that. So yeah, one of the main weaknesses of Vanquish Soul is that they're really bad against non-targeting effects. So all you have to do essentially is just to chain link order lower than whatever the protection effect is, in this case, the dodge targeting effect. So it'd be like chain link 1 Rosin to do literally anything. Just chain link 1 Rosin existing, I guess, or no effect on Rosin. Chain link 1 or 2 an effect to remove Rosin, and then it's doomed. There's nothing you can do about it. Because, for example, with the non-targeting Book of Moon on Dust Devil here, if we were to go chain Borger just gets booked instead, and then you still can't play. More or less. That is a Vanquish Soul moment. But yeah. The complexity of the game is only going to go up from here, honestly. And right now we're at 3FX. Eventually, the expectation I have is kind of that we will eventually move to 4 effects on all of your cards, just kind of in general. Because Vanquish Soul and all of your monsters and such, they all have 3 effects right now. If we go to Malice, I'd have to actually check, but I don't think anything here is quite to the point where we are at 4 effects. Like Dormouse has a few little effects, so actually this you could argue this as 4 effects, but the attack gain isn't that relevant. We have, of course, the pointed to point to this card. Card does something, and then we have the effect to kind of special summon a Malice from your deck, and then we have the effect to special summon itself when it is banished. So, I mean, this is borderline 4, but the 4th effect is just attack gain, technically, so it's not like that crazy, versus Shirin, where all 3 of the effects were pretty relevant, I'd say so, at least. And then this kind of has 4 effects as well, where we have special summon itself, draw a card, set a trap, and then we have banish 3 cards in the graveyard for kind of 4 effects on White Binder as well. So, I mean, I guess this is kind of worth mentioning, but I mean, if you could do very simple math, let's say we have our Rocket the Vanquisher, and then we have our, like, Malice links. Like, we don't even have to focus on the fact that there's only 1 Vanquish Soul link monster, but if I'm not mistaken, the number 3 here is less than 4, so these Malice monsters with 4 effects are going to be better and have an advantage over my cards with 3 effects. So, you know, 3 is less than 4. So, older archetypes kind of suffer a little bit in this regard, where they're getting left behind because of Powercreep. And I mean, you can kind of compare Vanquish Soul to Malice, and there's only, what, like a year apart from these 2 kind of archetypes. So, yeah, just with a year apart, they're already, like, some of their cards have 1 additional effect up on mine. And that's already pretty bad, but you have to consider as well that my Vanquish Soul cards can actually only activate technically 2 effects per turn. And I mean, this effect's not even super relevant to make Resin just not destructible by battle. It's not really building advantage, per se. So, Malice, Dormouse, it's at, like, 2 effects. I only have, like, 2 effects on my Resin, so I guess comparing these 2 as just starters, I guess those are, like, kind of fine, but when we compare the archetypes as a whole, it gets a little bit worse. And then, of course, the amount of insane text, where you kind of have to be aware of all the interactions, and the amount of text on this is just going to be crazy, because right now I've only really shown you guys, like, generic stuff for the most part. But we aren't dealing with, like, archetype versus archetype, where it would complicate things even more. So, for example, we could have, let's see, I don't know, we can do like Pearly Vanquish Soul matchup. Let's say, for example, you're a new player and you've decided to pick up Pearly, and now you're facing off against Vanquish Soul, alright? So, let's say you have my friend Pearly already, and you use Pearlily to add Stray Pearly Street. So this is going to be immediately a misplay, I would argue, because we have the effect here that says your opponent cannot target Pearly monsters you control with card effects the turn they are special summoned, which is a completely irrelevant effect against Vanquish Soul because, very simply put, there are no targeting effects in Vanquish Soul, meaning this protection does not exist. And then we have if a Pearly XYZ monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, special summon a level 1 Pearly monster from your deck or graveyard. That's not going to happen either, because I'm never going to allow you to make a Pearly XYZ if I can help it. So that protection's also useless, and then if we go check my friend, this also says Pearly XYZ monster. So very simply, I just need to stop you from making any Pearly XYZ monsters. So if we do like normal summon for a Lily, I can't really stop that. There's no negates here. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes. But if you were to chain per Lily effect, so, or no, if I go like chain 1 per Lily, and then the Vanquish Soul player goes chain 2 Vanquish Soul Dust Devil, this, if I were the Vanquish Soul player, I would know that this actually does nothing, and it would just book the guy, and then it would still rank up. But, you know, there are a lot of interactions that you would need to be aware of. So, like, if they did have Dust Devil, the correct play would be on summon to forcibly book just one of these cats, I guess, before the effect even activates. Otherwise, there's potential to get access into, for example, like Pearly Beauty, Plump, Happiness, whatever. You could potentially go into one of these guys, and there's like all sorts of threats like threatening Zeus. We have also the ability for my friend Pearly to then use the effect to add really quick plays. So we have to consider like all of that stuff in the matchup. But you know, if you're playing single player Pearly essentially, then all you have to do is yeah, you know, just activate like a card, special summon Pearly, grab my friend, grab like whatever you feel like. I guess Delicious Memory is fine, or Sleepy Memory. You just activate a bunch of cards, make a big fat cat, and then you're chilling, right? But then, you know, throw in the element of an entirely different deck, and your opponent piloting it, assuming they're competent, then yeah, the complexity here is going to be pretty insane. And that's just with what we have right now. And I feel like it's only going to kind of get worse, in the sense that the game's going to just get more and more complicated, making it harder and harder for kind of like newer players to kind of get into Yu-Gi-Oh! To an extent. And I mean, already with the high amount of mechanics, I think that's partially like why they're removing some mechanics from Genesis format. Like they removed links. And speaking of removing links, I guess worth mentioning is that in a lot of newer archetypes, we're starting to actually phase out links when it comes to like just I guess pure archetypes, right? So if we went back a few years, like how Mitsurugi feels like it would play is like you would special summon your like Mitsurugi cards, and then at some point for whatever reason you would link off, let's say Kusanagi plus whatever other card you have to make a link 2, like a Mitsurugi link 2 or something. Links were just like being put into every deck, I guess, instead of whatever that archetype is actually supposed to be doing. So, for example, like Fujin, this is actually an XYZ deck, but randomly, look right here, we have Fujinki Ahashima. Now, there's randomly a Link monster in this XYZ deck for just no real reason, honestly. I don't know the justification or idea behind, like, Ahashima in particular, but, you know, why isn't this just, you know, like, an XYZ monster? Why does this have to be a Link monster? You know, you just randomly had a Link monster, and that would be your support basically for whatever deck. So like at some point, like I guess, would you have been surprised if Automat just had a Link too, for example, or like whatever, like a mono kind of archetype, or not mono archetype, mono summoning method kind of like archetype, just randomly gets a Link 2 as support. That's kind of like I was kind of feeling like it could go. Every deck is just going to become a Link deck, pretty much. It kind of felt like that at some points. Well, yeah, to me at least. Aside from that, you know, the more mechanics we introduce, the more mechanics newer players have to learn doing so, but also like the tutorials aren't really good at the moment. Well, if we're focusing on like in game ones in Master Duel, the only thing I remember learning specifically from the tutorials is we have like gold sarcophagus. So if we were to banish a card with gold sarc and then we return it to the graveyard, that card is not considered sent to the graveyard this turn. Yeah, that's about all I remember ever learning from any solo gate. So thanks for that one, I guess, solo gates. That was the Kiranoi tutorial, I believe. That was a 3-card combo also, I think. But yeah. Oh right, forgot to mention one other thing about solo gates real quick. Yeah, sometimes you just have lethal on board, and then it would just tell you, oh, perform the synchro summon, but you already have lethal. And also, if you actually count the summons in the tutorial, if I recall correctly, I don't know which ones, but I feel like you go into 5 summons, which plays into Nibiru when you already had lethal on board. Just throwing that out there, tutorial. But yeah. But focusing back up for a second now, Vanquish Soul, just like this archetype isn't even what I would really consider that great, like in terms of just power level, right? But even then, the cards here are complicated, just insanely so. So for example, the math on like Vanquish Soul and what these cards do is kind of bonkers. So with like Rosin and all the other Vanquish Soul cards, if we were to well, let's see, how would I best explain this? So with your hand cards, there's kind of a limit to what you can kind of reveal and what you want to reveal. So for example, there's like weird math like here, if you see this, I have Ash Blossom Joe Spring, Xiaolong, we have like Fishter of Fenrir, Vanquish Soul Caesar Valius. So here this sounds like incredibly good. But yeah, how best to play this hand, I guess. If we start Fenrir, if our opponent's actually smart, they should just completely ignore the Fenrir, because even in actual Kashtira, just special summoning Fenrir and adding a monster off of Fenrir does genuinely nothing. So ignore it, basically, right? So this shouldn't even be able to bait anything. But if we actually start Fenrir, this is going to play into Nibiru now when the Vanquish Soul full combo, essentially off of normal Stone Rosin plus Xiaolong, you do the stuff involving these guys. That actually does not even play into Nib normally, but just the one extra special summon from Fenrir puts you into like Nibiru range, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, then we have Stake Your Soul, and this has to reveal something, and like all your other Vanquish Soul cards kind of have to somewhat reveal cards, and the cards you reveal and how you sequence can change what cards you're going to reveal. Like, if I wanted to, I could technically reveal Ash Blossom Joyous Spring in this hand, but if I sequence and search with Rosin a different way, I don't actually have to reveal this Ash Blossom at all and keep this as hidden information, just so my opponent does not know I have Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. But then there's also the idea of if I do reveal Ash Blossom Joyous Spring, I might be able to do a bit of a better line, but it gives my opponent this information, right? But also at the same time, what can my opponent even do with the information of Ash Blossom Spring? That's off of just the concept of Vanquish Soul revealing cards in their hands. You know, just to show some cards. Like, for example, I have DD Crow here, which I can reveal off of Borger for a draw. But then my opponent will know I have DD Crow. So if I have a response, then they know it's DD Crow. Except at the same time, because I revealed DD Crow, they're not going to expect that the trigger I was thinking about was actually if I should resolve Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion on that one effect instead. Because this DD Crow is actually masking the response of my Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. And all this ties to just revealing cards, basically, right? Which is a lot. And this is only kind of one deck, but yeah, there's a lot of things to consider when playing or playing against Vanquish Soul, just in general, regardless of whether the deck is good or not. But yeah, I mean, just handling your own deck is fairly hard, and then figuring out what your opponent's deck does, that's pretty hard too. And then figuring out the interactions between both kind of decks can be kind of difficult as well. And then you have to consider, oh, right, there are more decks in the game than just Vanquish Soul. So we have like, just to name a few lists, we have like, I don't know, Altergeist, Branded, Early Trickstar, Ishtira, just, you know, the list goes on. I don't know, Despot, just whatever, right? We have like over 100 kind of playable decks where, you know, just not knowing some information could cause you to play unoptimally or just lose straight up. And you're not necessarily going to just end up making one misplay, it could be several, actually, because you don't fully understand what the archetype does, its goals, what cards it has access to. So for example, with like Vanquish Soul, you have like Borger Caesar, you have Stake Your Soul, you have Xiaolong, so we could even, for example, I mean, your hand would have to be very specific because Vanquish Soul kind of sucks, but let's say I normal summon Razin, and you're not aware that I can do like special summon Pantera, effect to reveal, and then this reveal special allows me to special summon the Xiaolong here, and then I can link off Pantera to add Razin, and then that actually gives me enough cards to search with Xiaolong. So maybe in this particular case, the card that you should have hit with the removal was actually the Xiaolong and not Razin, which is actually something that would be worth considering if you only had access to like removal in this case. And then another example, I guess, where Branded just can search a lot of cards, you know, like we have Lubellium searching, I don't know, like Magnemite or something. Aluber searches a card, Branded Opening searches a card, and then we have like ideas of Foolish Burialing, Tragedy, Sending Tragedy to search Aluber. All of these searches, but like the thing you should ash is actually Branded Fusion, and you didn't know that. Or maybe you didn't know that actually holding Ash for Branded Fusion in this specific case, or yeah, holding Ash for Branded Fusion in this case was actually potentially a misplay. In the sense that I guess like your opponent had specifically triple tactics thrust for fusion duplication, and they're going to essentially resolve Branded Fusion on your turn. And you actually had a better line because you could have stopped the searches for Branded Fusion so they didn't have access to that line with something like specifically a Purge, which could have stopped the search. But you were worried about like this condition, so you held Ash for Branded Fusion or something. Like, there's some sort of ideas like that, I guess, maybe. I mean, yeah, it can technically come up sometimes, where your opponent just hard opened duplication as well, I guess. And then they can just set that and then activate the Branded Fusion next turn because you allowed them to search it at all, where they only had maybe one method to search it. So you could have just prevented that. whole thing, I guess, if you just ashed earlier, which is possible in this game technically, and you're not really aware that that was technically preventable if it was like impactful at all. And yeah, I mean, the game's complexity, it's not really going to be going down anytime soon, and it's only going to get more complicated from here as we start moving on to like monsters with 3 effects in the main deck to like 4 effects. And I mean, it would be insane to ever go past 4, I think, and start going to 5. But I mean, give it like 3 years, who knows? Maybe we'll be at 6 by then. But you know, there is technically only so much room down here for where you can put card text. Maybe. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.